Well, good afternoon, everyone. As you know, we're on the National Defense Authorization Act. I've asked Senator McCain and others who've been working on that bill to join us. It appears as if the Democratic position is that unless we spend what they want us to spend on agencies like the IRS and the EPA, they're not willing to beat the requested amount from the President himself for defense, which the NDAA underscores. Senator McCain is here. He's crafted a number of these bills in the past. I think he will confirm that the Democrats seem to be slowing the bill down. But our view is that this is a debate that needs to go on for a while. The national defense of the country is extremely important. Given the cyber attacks that occurred earlier in the week, it's the intention of Chairman Burr of the Intelligence Committee to offer cybersecurity to this bill, a bill that came out of intelligence 14-1. So we'll be doing both NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, and cybersecurity in the course of this debate. With that, let me turn over to Chairman McCain.
At 3 o'clock, there will be a vote on a Reid amendment, the ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. And what it will do, the effect will be to reduce by some $38 billion the authorization for equipment, for training, for readiness, and for the ability to defend this nation. It is ill-founded, and it would do enormous damage to our ability to defend the nation. Every military uniformed leader who has come before our committee has said that cutting this kind of money from our military would place the lives of the men and women serving in the military in greater danger. We cannot and should not do that. We are having a lot of amendments, and we will have lots of debate, as is very appropriate. And I would point out that the last 2 years, there was no debate and there was no amendments, because Senator Reid's view that the defense authorization bill did not warrant that. And now Senator Reid is saying that taking up the defense authorization bill with the world on fire is a waste of time. We disagree.
Well, yeah, I'd like to join my voice in the chorus of thinking this is a risky strategy. We just returned about a month and a half ago from seeing our troops in the Middle East with a trip with Senator McConnell, and I think that really brought home to me, as it always does, how absolutely important it is that we fund our troops, that we support our troops. We all have National Guard troops that are deployed all across the world. This means a lot to them and their families and to the security of our country. And so the fact that they're holding this bill hostage to move forward with a strategy for more domestic spending for things like the EPA and the IRS sends the wrong signal, I think, to our troops in the field, to the families who support them, and really to the security of this country. So I hope that the Democrats will have a light bulb go off in their heads to realize that this is the wrong method to make their point, and we will stand strong behind our military, behind the defense of this country. Thank you.
Yep.
I'd like to thank Senator McCain for the good work that he did on this bill in committee. I serve on the Armed Services Committee with him, and he was open. We had a great process. We went through a long process of putting together a bill that came out of committee on a strong vote, on a strong bipartisan vote. This is so important. I think every American realizes that. And we are having a process where we're having debate. You know, it was a couple weeks ago when I stood here and said how excited I was to have the NDAA on the floor, where we were going to have debate. Senator McCain was having an open amendment process, and he's continuing that. So I thank him for that. It's disappointing to see the action of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. We have a very important bill here. It has reform in it of our acquisition system. It rebuilds readiness. It reduces costs that we're seeing with the headquarters staff at the Pentagon. It invests in the future. And these investments are all put at risk by a very strange strategy on the other side. I happen to believe that all government spending is not created equal. Our first priority as a federal government is for the national defense. And we have the obligation, the duty, to be able to provide our military with the resources that they need so that they can carry out the missions that we give them. And to make this into a political back and forth makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to the people of Nebraska, and it makes no sense to the American people. Our duty is to care for the security of our people and our country. And what the Democrats are doing on this bill is not fulfilling that responsibility. So I urge my colleagues on the other side to take a step back and realize that they have an obligation and they have a duty to provide for the defense and the security of this country. Thank you.
There is a growing bipartisan consensus that America's energy resources are not only a source of our economic strength, they are an important element in our national security assets as well. And you see people like Leon Panetta, among others, who have stepped forward and said we need to be smart about how we use this great national security asset, particularly in the light of those who would use energy as a weapon, and talking specifically about Vladimir Putin and his willingness to turn the energy off, the gas off, to Ukraine and other countries in Europe. But we need to make sure that our friends around the world know that America can be a reliable trading partner when it comes to our energy assets, and also undermine the efforts of our adversaries like Mr. Putin to use energy as a weapon. We can do that by passing the amendment which I've introduced to this National Defense Authorization Bill, and I hope our colleagues will join together and continue this bipartisan consensus and discussion about how we can use our energy assets as a source of our national security strength.
Yesterday, the president in Germany said the health care law is working well. Today, at a meeting of the Catholic health care groups, the president again talked about health care and kept saying the reality is. Well, the president must be seeing a very different reality than most of America is seeing. The support of the health care law is right now at an all-time low, and the reason of that is most people feel it is a bad deal for them personally. Costs have exploded, not just the cost of premiums, but the cost of co-pays, the cost of deductibles, all this in spite of the president's promise that people would see premiums dropping by $2,500 per family. The newest reports are premiums are going to skyrocket again this year, so there is no end in sight. And yet yesterday, at the G7 meeting, the president went and criticized the Supreme Court and said that if the Supreme Court rules against him in the upcoming King versus Burwell case, that he'd have a single line, a single sentence bill that could fix everything. Well, this Congress is not going to pass a fake fix for this president. We're going to continue to take significant exception to this health care law, which has been bad for patients and for providers and for taxpayers. What we are going to do is protect the people when we see the Supreme Court ruling, not protect the law.
So the Senate has passed a defense authorization bill every year for the last 54 years. But as Senator McCain said, the last few years we haven't really debated the defense authorization bill. Even this year, Senator Reid said it was a waste of time to debate this bill, which is pretty hard to figure out until you realize that for the last couple of years before this, Senator Reid said, well, we're going to vote on the bill, but we're not really going to debate it. We're not going to amend it. We're not going to spend the time. This bill is a topic worth spending time on. It's the #1 priority of the federal government. It is the one thing that virtually no one argues that we can do for ourselves or that some state and local government could do better. Having this priority is an important one. Having this debate is important. This is a bill that looks at what we're doing to be sure that people are ready to defend the country. It requires the Pentagon to look at the bureaucracy again. It establishes a new retirement option. Under today's retirement option, the only one available, less than 1 out of 5 people who serve benefit from a retirement plan. This proposes a new plan that 75% is the estimate of people who serve would benefit from that plan. This is what happens when you debate the bill and talk about how we could do this important job of defending the country better. And hopefully today's vote will indicate that not only are we going to debate the bill, but we're going to move forward and pass this bill and establish what our defense priorities are, and then figure out how to pay for those defense priorities.
As a member of the Armed Services Committee, I was pleased to be part of an overwhelming bipartisan majority for this defense authorization bill. Bipartisanship is a good thing when it comes to foreign policy. It's a good thing when it comes to national security. And it is particularly important and essential when it comes to supporting our troops, which is what this bill does. We've always had a bipartisan majority in the United States Senate for this National Defense Authorization Act. We did under Chairman Levin. I have every confidence that in the end we're going to have a bipartisan majority under Chairman McCain. You know, sometimes you start off suiting up in a partisan way. It happened with the Iran nuclear bill. It started off Republicans versus Democrats. At the end, we were all united, sent a bill to the president. He completely changed his view and agreed to sign that bill. So we moved from partisanship to bipartisanship. We started the day on the defense markup with every Democrat saying they opposed the bill and every Republican supporting the bill. By the end of the markup, through the leadership of John McCain, we actually passed the bill with 8 Democrats in support and only 4 Democrats opposed. So I think, as Senator Capito said, that light will go off. Perhaps today at 3 o'clock we'll line up in a partisan way once again. But with that behind us, I think members of the Senate will keep in mind that this bill funds national defense at the President's suggested funding level, and we will join hands on behalf of the troops for national defense.
Yeah.
Senator Durbin today talked about convening a budget summit, perhaps as early as next week, where congressional leaders from the House and Senate and the White House would set a spending level so you can move ahead on these appropriations bills that the Democrats are holding up.
Yeah, well, we've set a spending level. We did it in the budget. And when we finish the National Defense Authorization Act, we'll go to the Defense Appropriations Bill. And the Appropriations Committee in the Senate is reporting out bills consistent with the budget that the Senate passed. And we're going to move forward and see what our friends on the other side want to do. As Senator Wicker just pointed out, there's been a lot of big talk about stopping bills. We'll see whether they really want to do that. And we've decided it's important to start with the nation's defense, the most important responsibility of the federal government.
So now's not the time to have a budget summit.
No, of course not.
Senator McConnell.
Yeah.
If the hack into the OPM database turns out to be state-sponsored and from China, should the United States retaliate? And is there anything that Congress can do to retaliate if it is state-sponsored?
Well, I think what Congress can do, as I suggested earlier, is offer the bipartisan cybersecurity bill that came out of the Intelligence Committee 14-1 on the Defense Authorization Act. It might or might not deal with every aspect of what apparently happened a few days ago, but Congress is going to act on cybersecurity on this bill in the very near future.
Leader McConnell, if the Supreme Court rules against the Obamacare tax subsidies later this month, some of your senators think that people who are getting subsidies should be held harmless. Do you agree, and under what conditions would you restore the subsidies? I'm
going to let Senator Barrasso, who's been our leader on this.
Well, we want to protect the people that are harmed by the president's illegal actions if the Supreme Court rules that way, but we're not going to protect the law. We want to provide a safe transition for them back to decisions being made locally and by the states, and try to help them get away from the significant mandates of the President's health care law. Of course, remember, it is the individual mandate that people find so offensive about the health care law, mandate that they have to buy government-approved insurance, not just what works for them and their family, but what the President says works for them or is needed for them or their family. The support is today at an all-time low for the President's health care law across the country, regardless of what the President may say.
So what about people who might lose subsidies? Would you support giving them back in some way?
We have worked on legislation in both the House and the Senate. We're coming very close together on that. We'll bring that out after the Supreme Court makes a ruling, and it does protect those people who have felt that they were following the law, even though the President wasn't actually following the law. So we do want to help and protect them through this transition.
But what if the President ends up responding through an order or any other way?
The President's response so far has been to protect the insurance companies. Remember, the way this has worked out is the President said that any insurance companies, if the Supreme Court rules against him in the King case, that the insurance companies could discontinue these policies, could drop these people. But yet the President has also said that he has made no plans, no plan B for what happens if the Supreme Court rules against him, and I think that's been irresponsible on the part of this President and the White House.
Okay, thanks a lot.